Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session on accounting for investments. This is the topic prescribed for semester 5 of TY BCom. And with this topic, we are going to begin with the online discussion about the topic called as accounting for investments as per the provisions of Accounting Standard 13. In this discussion, we are going to understand what do you mean by investments, what kind of investments are referred over here. We are also going to discuss different types of investments. How do we account for these investments in the books of accounts, and also the accounting for income in respect of these investments. All of you are aware that whenever you have some spare funds, it's a very common human tendency to invest these funds so that one can earn some kind of income. Likewise, when these investments are made by companies, then you have to account for these investments in the books of the company. And when you account for these investments in the books of the company, it is also necessary to see what kind of legal requirements or what kind of other compliance requirements are there. And based on that, we are supposed to account for this in the books of the company. And one such provision is Accounting Standard 13. So we will be discussing about broad provisions of Accounting Standard 13 in connection with accounting for these investments. Now, if you go to the provisions of Accounting Standard 13, it gives you meaning of investment. It says that investments are the assets held for earning income in the nature of interest, dividend, rent, capital appreciation, or for other benefits. That means if the corporate entity or the investing enterprise is having some assets which are held by the entity either for the purpose of earning interest or dividend or rent or for capital appreciation or for any other benefit, then such asset will qualify as an investment within the meaning of Accounting Standard 13. Now, Accounting Standard 13 also classifies the investments, and there are two ways in which the investments can be classified. One way is on the basis of period for which you are holding the investment. How long do you hold the investment? That is one parameter for classification. The second parameter for classification is based on nature of investment. So let us see what is this classification. If you go by the period, then you can classify the investments as long-term investments or current investments. And if you classify them with reference to the earnings, then you can classify the investments as those which have a fixed earning or fixed rate of return, and those securities or investments which will have a variable rate of return. So this is the basic classification of investments. We will discuss as we proceed further the exact meaning of long-term investments, current investments, what is meant by fixed earning securities, or what is meant by variable earning securities. That will be discussed in next few slides. So AS 13 gives you meaning of investment. It also tells you little more on the classification of investments. Let's go further. Now, as per AS 13, the investments are classified in some specified categories. Which are the categories or types? First is government and trust securities, which are issued by government or a local authority. So whenever you are holding any securities which are either government securities or trust securities, means which are accepted as an investment by the Public Trust Act. So these are known as trust securities, and these are issued either by the government or by local authority. In such a scenario, these will be considered as investments for this purpose. The investments will also include debentures and bonds which are issued by companies or corporates. So debenture, bonds, or these types of instruments, these types of securities are also considered as an investment. If you hold any shares which are issued by companies, either equity shares or preference shares as the case may be, these will also qualify as an investment under AS 13. Then You may have deposits with banks or companies, or you may have immovable property like real estate, commercial premises, a shop, or maybe a residential flat, which are basically immovable properties, land and building kind of investments. The investment will also include other types of investments like insurance policies or investment in a capital of a partnership firm or jewelry or those kind of valuable items. So this is a classification given by Accounting Standard 13. Now, out of these items, three items are given in bold, and the reason being, in our syllabus, we are going to discuss about the accounting aspects for first three items. That means if you are holding government or similar types of securities, or if you have debentures or bonds, or if you have shares or similar type of securities, then how do we account for them in the books of a company? So we will not be discussing about accounting for deposits with banks or immovable property or insurance policies or other types of investments. The first three items which are kept in bold letters are the ones in the context of which we are going to discuss about the accounting aspects as per AS 13. Now let us understand some of the features of these investments. Now we are classifying investments as long-term investments and current investments. So what is the meaning of these long-term and current investments? A current investment is the one which can be readily realized. That means you can immediately or at a very short notice convert that into monetary consideration. You can get cash by realizing these securities, and which is intended to be held for not more than a year. So your expected holding period will not exceed a year. In such a case, it will be considered as a current investment. So two parameters are considered. One, it should be readily realizable, and secondly, the holding period is not expected to exceed a year as such. If there is investment other than current investment, then it will be treated as a long-term investment. So this is the meaning of short-term or current investments or long-term investments. The next aspect with regard to these two types of investments is a mode of valuation. A current investment is valued at lower of cost or fair market value. What is the meaning of cost? That we'll discuss a little while from now. Fair market value is a price you can realize by selling this particular security at arm's length transaction to another party in the market. So this is known as a fair market value of the security. And in case of long-term investment, the mode of valuation is different. In case of long-term investments, we usually carry it forward, we value it at cost. But if there is any permanent reduction in the value of investment, then that will have to be factored in by way of a provision. So long-term investments are usually carried in the balance sheet at cost, less provision, if any, for permanent reduction in the value of these investments. Whereas current investments are carried forward in the balance sheet at lower of cost or fair market value. So these are the some of the classic features of long-term investments and current investments. As I was referring to the cost of investment, so what do you mean by cost of investment? Cost of investment will include the purchase price. Obviously, whatever price you pay to acquire these investments, that will be included as part of your cost of these investments. It will also include incidental expenses. For example, when you acquire the investments, some of the investments will require a brokerage, payment of brokerage if you deal through an agent or a broker. You may have to pay some duties or some kind of legal levies which are payable to the government. All these expenses will form part and parcel of your cost of investments. Now the question is, if you are acquiring investments on different occasions at different points of time, then how do you determine the cost of investments? We have two or three options. One is a first in, first out basis. So just like your FIFO formula for stock in trade, you can apply FIFO formula to determine the cost of investment on FIFO basis. Another option is weighted average basis. You can calculate the cost on the basis of weighted average. And the third option is specific item basis. So item to item basis, you will find out what is the cost, and that will be considered as cost for these investments. Now, if you refer to the provisions of Accounting Standard 13, it provides you only weighted average basis, rather it prescribes weighted average basis as the mode of calculation of cost of investments. So as per AS 13, if you want to derive the formula, the weighted average cost equals to total number of securities which are sold divided by total number of securities which you have multiplied by total cost of securities in hand on the date of sale. In other words, we are required to calculate weighted average cost usually at the time of sale of securities to find out profit or loss. So when you do so, it's a proportionate cost that has to be considered by using the proportion of number of securities which are sold vis-a-vis total number of securities which you are holding at that point in time. So on proportionate basis, you have to find out this weighted average cost at the time of sale of these securities. This will be extremely important because you have to find out the profit or loss at the time of sale of these securities. And this formula will be useful for this purpose. So we have discussed about cost of investments also. Now, let us look at the income perspective of these investments. What are the key issues when you consider the income from these investments? We were referring to fixed income bearing securities like bonds, debentures, etc. They will have a fixed rate of interest. A bond may carry 10% interest, a debenture may have 12% interest, or similar kind of fixed rate of return. In case of preference shares also, it is in the nature of fixed income bearing security because it carries a fixed rate of dividend like 10% preference shares or 12% preference shares, etc. Whereas certain types of securities will have a variable rate of return. For example, equity shares. Equity shares, you will get dividend as a return, but it will be available to you only when it is declared by the company, and it depends on profits and certain other factors. Therefore, equity shares is considered as variable income bearing security. So this is one mode of classification that you can use. Now, when it comes to the interest on bonds, debentures, etc., we need to understand and remember a couple of points. Number one, the interest will be always calculated on the nominal value of bonds or debentures or face value of bonds and debentures. Number two, the interest will accrue on specified dates. When the bonds are issued or when the debentures are issued, as per the terms of issue, these dates are fixed and the interest will be accrued and paid going by these specified dates. And who will get the interest? Whomsoever is a registered security holder, he will usually get the interest. Whomsoever is a registered security holder on the due date of interest, he is the person who is expected to get the payment of interest from the company. So when we are considering the interest income, we have to ensure that it is considered only on nominal or face value of security. It is accrued on specified dates and it is paid to the security holder on the due date. The person who is holding the security on due date, he is the one who will be eligible to receive the interest on these securities. Now, whenever there is a transfer of security, whenever there is a sale of security, we need to understand a few key issues with reference to this interest. Similar issues are there for dividend, which we will discuss separately. Right now, let us discuss for interest. If you are transferring the security, say a bond or a debenture, on the due date of interest, then the interest till that date, that is date of sale, that will belong to the seller. The seller is expected to get that income. If the transfer happens on a date which is other than a due date, then how the scenario has to be looked at. In that case, if the transfer has been made on a date which is other than due date, whomsoever is the buyer, he will receive the interest on the next due date on which the interest is payable. So after the date of sale, whichever is the next due date of interest, on that date, the buyer will be holding the securities, so he will be liable to receive the interest. Then what happens to the interest from the previous due date of payment of interest till the date of transfer of this security? That fraction of period, the interest will belong to the seller because the seller was holding the security up to the date of sale. So from the last payment date of interest till the date of transfer, the interest should belong to the seller. We will see in next few slides and further discussion how these things are actually happening when the sale or purchase of transaction is taking place. Then in the same scenario, interest from the date of transfer till the next due date, that will belong to the buyer. So that means whenever there is a transaction of sale of security not on the due date, part of the interest will belong to the buyer, part of the interest will belong to the seller. So there is a fraction of period where the interest will belong to the seller and fraction of the period where the interest will be paid to the buyer. How actually it happens, that we will see in next few slides as we proceed with our discussion. But this is a key issue that one should keep in mind when one is talking about interest in case of transfer of security. Let us take an example to understand these issues. Suppose there is a company A Limited which has sold some debentures to B Limited, and these debentures have due date of interest as 31st of December and 30th of June. So let us take 2 or 3 different dates of these transactions, date of sale, and we will see how the interest is shared between the buyer and the seller as the case may be. The first date of sale is 1st of July 2019. Now when the sale takes place on 1st of July 2019, on the date prior to that, 30th June 2019, A Limited, the seller, was holding the security, and A Limited would receive the interest up to 30th June 2019. So on 30th June 2019, whatever interest is payable, that will entirely go to A Limited, and thereafter, whatever is the accrued interest or interest payable, that will belong to B Limited, who has become the owner of these securities on 1st of July 2019. Suppose the date of sale is 30th September 2019. Now here comes the issue, because the last date of interest payment was 30th June 2019. The next date of interest payment is 31st December 2019. Please note these dates carefully. The date of sale is 30th September 2019. The earlier payment of interest has happened on 30th June 2019, and the next date of payment will falls due for next date of interest payment is falling due on 31st of December 2019, and in between these two dates the security has been transferred. Now if you see the logic, interest up to 30th September 2019, that is from 1st of July till 30th September 2019, belongs to A Limited, and interest from 1st October 2019 till 31st December 2019 will belong to B Limited. But in reality, how this will happen? On 31st December, B Limited will receive the interest for 6 months because it is holding the security on that particular date. But then will A Limited get the interest? The answer is yes. B Limited will compensate to A Limited a part of the interest for the period from 1st of July 2019 to 30th September 2019 at the time of sale. So whenever the sale takes place on 30th September 2019, B Limited will pay the selling price of security, the value of debenture or selling price of debenture. And in addition to that, it is bound to pay some interest element to A Limited. Which interest is to be paid to A Limited by B Limited? It is the interest for the period from 1st of July 2019 till 30th September 2019. So in practice, This is how the interest is getting shared between the buyer and seller of these securities. Suppose the date of sale happens to be 31st December 2019. Then what happens? In this case, the interest up to 31st December 2019 anyway belongs to A Limited. So A Limited will receive the interest on 31st December 2019. And from 1st Jan 2020, the interest will belong to B Limited. So then thereafter, whenever is the next due date of payment of interest, it is the B Limited who will receive the interest on these debentures. So whenever we are looking at sale of debentures or sale of fixed income bearing securities like government securities, etc., we need to be little careful about the date of accrual of interest and the date of sale of these bonds, debentures, or securities, and accordingly, the interest has to be accrued in the books of either buyer or the seller, as the case may be. So this is about the accrual of interest and conceptual framework for accounting for interest. Now you may come across a couple of terms which are used for pricing of security, and very commonly used terms are X interest price and cum interest price. What is the X interest price? It means a price paid towards cost of security and excludes interest. Very important. X interest price will exclude interest. So it is a price paid only towards the cost for acquiring, for buying a security. And what is a cum interest price? It is a price paid towards cost of security plus interest accrued till date. So cum interest price is inclusive of interest, and X interest price excludes the interest. We have to be very careful about these two terms, because depending on whether we are looking at X interest transaction or cum interest transaction, it will have a lot of bearing on calculation of cost of security, calculation of interest, accounting for interest, accounting for profit, loss, etc. So one has to be very careful about these two types of pricing methodologies for securities. Suppose the question is silent, then what should we do? We should assume that it is a price which is X interest price. So in the absence of any information as such, we can assume that this is the X interest price at which the transaction has taken place. So one has to remember these two types of pricing of securities, and these are going to be helpful for you for a variety of calculations as well as accounting transactions. Now let us try to understand the accounting for purchase with reference to X interest and cum interest transaction. Let us take a case from the purchase side. If you are purchasing the securities which is either X interest or which is cum interest purchase, then how do we account for this? How do we break the numbers? How do we account for this? Let us take the X interest calculation first. Suppose you are purchasing 300 debentures which are purchased X interest, so it doesn't include the interest. The face value of the debenture is 100 rupees per debenture. So 300 into 100, 30,000 is your face value or nominal value of these debentures. The debentures are carrying interest at 15% per annum, and a half yearly payment of interest is scheduled on 30th of June and 31st of December. So there is a 6 monthly payment of interest. And you are purchasing these 300 debentures on 1st of March 2019, and your X interest price quoted is 98 rupees per debenture. So let us understand as to when you purchase these debentures, how will you settle the transaction? First of all, this is the X interest price. That means it does not include the interest. So 98 rupees is the X interest price multiplied by 300 units, 300 debentures you have purchased. So it comes to 29,400. So you will pay a price of 29,400 to acquire 300 debentures at a price of 98 rupees per debenture. This is the X interest price. but the seller will not agree. Why he will not agree? You are executing the transaction on 1st March 2019. The seller has received the interest up to 31st December 2018, but he has not received the interest for 2 months, that is uh, February and March, because not February and March, it should be Jan and Feb. So the seller has not received the interest for 2 months, which is Jan and Feb. Let me just make a correction there. No, it will not be possible. Okay, let's go ahead. The interest is not accrued for Feb and March. It should be actually 2 months. It should be Jan and Feb. Now, when you calculate the interest for Jan and Feb, it's a 2 months interest. So, on 30,000 face value, 15% per annum for a period of 2 months, the interest comes to 750 rupees. Now, the seller will tell you, you being the buyer, you have to pay me 750 rupees towards the interest. So, what you will do? You will pay 29,400 to acquire the debentures. You will also additionally pay interest of 750 rupees. So total amount to be paid by you will be 30,150. But out of that, the cost of investment is only 29,400 and remaining amount 750 rupees is being paid as interest. This is a X interest transaction. Now suppose you are looking at cum interest transaction. Let us take the example of a cum interest transaction. You are acquiring 300 debentures. These 300 debentures again have a face value of 100. The rate of interest remains the same, 15% per annum. Due dates are also the same. Transaction is happening on 1st of March 2019. The price is 101 per debenture. This is a cum interest price. Now, when it is a cum interest price, it includes the interest, and it is necessary that we have to bifurcate the interest. So let us see how do we bifurcate the interest. Now, first of all, 300 debentures multiplied by 101. Total selling price is 30,300. So the buyer will pay to the seller 30,700 rupees towards 300 debentures priced at 101 rupee per debenture. But again, this is a cum interest price. That means it includes interest. Which interest? It will include the interest for the month of Jan and Feb. It's wrongly typed as Feb and March. It should be Jan and Feb. So 2 months interest on 300 debentures of face value of 100 each at 15% per annum. If you calculate, it will be 750 rupees. So 30,300, what we are looking at is a total price. It includes the interest of 750. So from that, for accounting purpose, if you remove the interest of 750, you will get 29,550, which will be the cost of investment in your books. In your books as a buyer, you will account for the investment at 29,550. So this is how X interest and cum interest quotations are to be considered, and pricing, cost, interest has to be accounted for in the books of the buyer. Now the same scenario we will look at from the perspective of a seller. We are accounting for a sale. Let's take a X interest case. We have 100 debentures, face value is 100, rate of interest is 12% per annum. Half yearly payment of interest happening on 30th June and 31st December, and the date of sale is 1st of March. Let us look at X interest consideration, X interest price. 98 rupees is the price of debenture. 100 debentures are sold. So price received, selling price is 98 into 100. That will be 9,800. Now you are a seller and you have received the payment of interest up to 31st of December. But what about Jan and March? Jan and Feb. It's again typed as Feb and March. It should be Jan and Feb. So what about 2 months of Jan and Feb? You as a seller should be getting that interest. So that means you will consider and receive that interest separately. Now on 100 debentures, 100 rupees face value, total face value is 10,000. 12% interest for 2 months will work out to 200 rupees. So you will receive 9,800 as selling price of debentures, plus you will receive 200 rupees towards the interest. So total amount received will be 10,000. But out of this 10,000, what is the actual selling price of investment, or what we call it as capital receipt? It will be only 9,800 rupees. So this is how your X interest calculation will happen. Let us take the example of cum interest calculation. Now in cum interest calculation, we are assuming the same data, except that the selling price we are assuming is 101 rupees. Now this 101 rupees selling price, it's a cum interest price, so it will include the interest also. So when it includes interest, what is your total amount? It's 101 into 100. So total amount received, total price received is 10,100 rupees. But this 10,100 rupees also includes the interest. So we have to remove the interest to find out the actual selling price or to find out the capital receipt. How much is the interest? Again, the same equation, same calculation. Interest for Jan and Feb, that is for 2 months. The interest on face value of 10,000 for 2 months will come to 200 rupees. So 10,100 minus 200 rupees, the actual capital receipt or the actual selling price is 9,900 rupees. So from the seller's perspective, you are receiving 10,100. Out of that, 9,900 is a capital receipt or the selling price, and remaining 200 rupees is the interest for 2 months, that is Jan and Feb 2019. So this is how the accounting will happen, or details will be considered in the books of the seller. Now let us have a look at the format of ledger for investment. For every security, you will have to open a separate account. Suppose you have 10 different debentures, 10 different companies in which you are holding debentures. For each one of them, you will have a separate ledger account. The usual ledger format, except we are going to have a couple of additional columns. Now, what are the columns? Date, particulars. You will have folio number also. Then NV stands for nominal value. We are going to have face value or nominal value as one more column. Then for the amounts, we are going to have two columns, income column and capital column, because the accounting has to be made for interest or similar kind of income, and capital column for the cost. So on the debit side as well as on credit side, you will have actually three columns to denote the amounts, one of them being face value or nominal value, another column for income, which could be interest, etc., and a third column to place the capital cost or those kind of amounts in respect of these investments. So this is how your investment account will generally look like, with additional columns apart from the usual columns like date, particulars, etc. With this, we begin with the accounting for purchase. Suppose you are purchasing investments. How do we account for purchase of these investments? You are purchasing investment at X interest price. If you are buying the investment at X interest price, that means you are paying separately for investment, you are paying separately for interest. So the entry will be investment account debit, interest account debit to bank account. The investment account will be debited for X interest price, which will become cost of investment. Interest account will be debited for whatever the fractional period interest you are going to pay to the seller. So that will be debited to interest account, and total payment will be credited to the bank account. So this is the purchase at X interest price. Suppose the purchase is at cum interest price, then what happens? You are going to make the total payment, but investment account will be debited only for the cost of this investment, and here you have to find out the cost of investment. And interest account will be debited for the fractional period for which you are going to pay the interest. So your entry will remain the same. investment account debit, interest account debit to bank account. But some calculations will have to be taken care of. Firstly, the investment cost. Investment cost will be total payment minus interest included in your cum interest price. So you have to calculate the interest, remove it from total payment, and that will give you cost of investment. And this amount of interest will be debited to interest account for the time being. So the basic accounting entry though remains the same, whether it is a X interest calculation or whether it is a cum interest price, but some calculations are involved for cost of investment when it comes to the cum interest price accounting for investments. Then suppose these investments are sold, then how do we account for the sale of investment? Suppose the investment is sold as X interest, then that means you are going to get separately the interest, and whatever price is received, it is a capital receipt entirely. So the entry passed is bank account debit, total receipt, total amount received, to investment account, the price which you have received towards the capital cost. This is the capital receipt for sale of investments. To interest account, the accrued interest for the fraction of the period which you are going to receive from the buyer will be credited to interest account. So for X interest price, the entry will be bank account debit, to investment account the capital price, to interest account the accrued interest. Now if the sale is X interest, if the sale is cum interest, the second entry should be treated as, it's not X interest, it is a cum interest. I'm sorry for the typing error. The entry will be bank account debit, total receipt, whatever money you have received, to investment account, price received towards the capital cost. So total receipt minus interest. To interest account, the accrued interest. So whatever interest is received, that goes to interest account. Whatever is the capital price, that goes to investment account, and total amount is debited to bank account. Please note that first entry on the top is X interest price, and the second entry should be cum interest price. There is a typo error over there, so please note that typo error. It should be cum interest price and not the X interest price. When I share these copies in PDF, this PPT, I'll make necessary corrections and then I'll share this PPT with you. So for the time being, the first entry is X interest, the second entry is cum interest price. Please make note of the typo error in the second entry. Now there are a few other entries which we'll have to account for. Whenever you sell the investments, you will have to find out what is the profit or loss on sale of investment, and every time that profit or loss will have to be transferred to profit and loss account. We must calculate the profit on the basis of weighted average cost. We have already discussed about the formula for weighted average cost. So using that, we have to find out what is the weighted average cost, compare that with the capital receipt or the selling price, and account for the profit in respect of sale of these investments. Suppose there is a profit, the entry will be investment account debit to profit and loss account. So the profit will be transferred to profit and loss account by passing the entry investment account debit to profit and loss account. Apart from that, there are a couple of other entries. One of them is receipt of interest on due date. Whenever there is a periodical payment of interest, and if you are holding the security on that day, you will receive the interest. So the entry will be bank account debit to interest account as and when you receive the interest. Now in some cases, towards the end of the year, we have to accrue the interest. The interest is outstanding, that has to be accounted for, accrued for. So we pass the entry interest accrued account debit or accrued interest account debit to interest account. We account for that income towards the end of the year. And interest income is a nominal account. It's an income. So it needs to be transferred to profit and loss account towards the end of the year by passing the entry interest account debit to profit and loss account. So at the end of the year, we transfer the interest to profit and loss account. Now suppose you have current investments. The principle of valuation in case of current investments is cost or fair market value, whichever is lower. And in the scenario, you may have some loss to be booked because your fair market value will be lower than cost. And if the fair market value is less than the cost, you have to account for that loss. How will you account for that loss? The entry will be profit and loss account debit to investment account. So if you have short-term or current investments where the fair market value on the balance sheet date is less than the cost, the difference has to be accounted for as a loss, and the entry will be profit and loss account debit to investment account. So with this, you can transfer the loss to the profit and loss account. Now, so far what we had discussed was in the context of debentures, bonds, or similar types of fixed interest bearing securities. There are a few additional points that we have to consider for equity shares. If you're buying and selling equity shares, few additional considerations, key issues are involved. So let us discuss those issues now. First issue is the receipt of dividend. If the shares are fully paid up, then the dividend will be calculated on the face value of the shares. So when you are receiving the dividend, if you are holding the shares, equity shares, which are fully paid up, the dividend will always be calculated on the face value of the shares. The dividend accrues on declaration and paid to the shareholder who owns the shares on the date of book closure. See, in case of a company, the dividend is recommended by the board of directors. It is then approved by the annual general meeting, the shareholders, and then it is paid to the shareholders. So at that point in time, there is a record date, and whomsoever is a shareholder on the record date will get the dividend on those shares. So it accrues on declaration and is paid to the shareholder who is the owner of the shares on the date of book closure. At the time of book closure, whomsoever owns the shares, he is eligible to receive the dividend. The dividend will be accounted only when received. There is no accrual of dividend as such. We account for only when the dividend is received. There is one more important concept, and that is dividend for pre-acquisition period and dividend for post-acquisition period. The dividend for pre-acquisition period is a capital receipt and it is credited to investment account. And dividend for post-acquisition period is a revenue receipt and that is considered as a revenue income which is transferred to profit and loss account. I'll give you an example on this. Suppose on, let's say, 31st May 2020, I repeat, on 31st May 2020, you purchased shares, equity shares of a company. You were not the owner on 31st March 2020, and subsequently you have received the dividend for the year ended on 31st March 2020, sometime in the month of, let's say, June 2020. Let me again repeat the transaction. On 31st May 2020, you acquired equity shares of a company. The company closes its books on 31st March every year. So it has closed the books on 31st March 2020. It has completed the audit and other formalities. And in the month of June 2020, you received the dividend in respect of these shares. Now, when you receive the dividend in respect of these shares, this dividend belongs to the period, that is accounting year ended on 31st March 2020. Now the question is, were you a shareholder or were you holding these shares on 31st March 2020? The answer is no. So in that case, this dividend will be treated as a dividend for pre-acquisition period. It is treated as a capital receipt and it is credited to the investment account. This will reduce the cost of investment. This will not be treated as a revenue receipt and this will be treated as a capital receipt and credited to the investment account. Now, just like your investment account for debentures, etc., for which we have seen the format, you may have investment account for equity shares with nominal value and cost columns, and you can consider dividend account as a separate account. That accounting is possible because you need not include a dividend column in the same account. You can have a separate account for that. I'm sure a detailed discussion on this, both your debentures, etc., the calculations, the accounting, and even for equity shares will be clear as we proceed with sums on this. Because I know it's going to be a little technical discussion for the time being, but as we proceed with the practical problems, with the problems and solutions, it will be a little easier for you to understand these concepts more clearly. Now, there are a couple of more items that we have to discuss when we think of shares. Suppose you receive the bonus shares. Now, what is the bonus share? All of you are aware that the bonus shares are issued by the company by capitalization of reserves. So, when the shareholder receives the bonus share, he will not pay any cost of, he will not have any cost of acquisition. So, how do we account for this? The cost will be zero, but in face value column, we will show the face value of these bonus shares. So in investment account, the face value column will have face value of bonus shares, but the cost of these investments will be zero in the books of the shareholder. Then right shares. If the company offers right shares and if you subscribe for these right shares, then whatever price you have paid for acquiring these right shares will be reflected in your amount column as a cost of these investments, and in face value you will enter the face value will be entered in face value column. Now sometimes when you are eligible for right shares, you may not subscribe to these right shares. You will sell these right entitlements, and somebody else will buy these right entitlements by paying you a premium, and you will get some income from this. Now what you are selling is a right entitlement. It is not a share which is being sold by you. So whenever there is a sale of right entitlement, this amount is considered as other income and it is credited directly to profit and loss account. So one has to be a little careful when it comes to the sale of right entitlement. These amounts or these items of income are directly credited to profit and loss account. So with this, I will conclude this session on the background material for accounting for investments. I know it was a little lengthy session, close to 50 minutes, because we have discussed about both fixed income securities and equity shares, with discussion focused on accounting for cost, accounting for sale, accounting for profit, accounting for interest, dividend, etc. I will also share with my own students the copy of this PowerPoint presentation. I will have to make a couple of corrections, as I told you, which we have noticed while discussing this presentation. I'll make those corrections, those typo errors will be corrected, and then I will share this presentation with you all. If you like this presentation, if you like this video lecture, please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you'll receive the updates on further lectures which are being uploaded. If you have any comments, suggestions, you can write a mail. My mail ID is here, caprasanna.tambe@gmail.com. Thank you very much for patient listening to this video lecture, and you can subscribe to channel to receive further updates. Wish you all the best for all your academic endeavors.